When I first started gardening, it was to attract the butterflies. And this video is going to be about why butterfly gardening is a gateway drug. So what do I mean by this? I say it kind of as a silly joke in a way, but at the same time I really do think it can be true for a lot of us. When I started gardening, it was a mix of I want to attract butterflies and I want a pretty garden of flowers. That was how it all started. And so when I say it's a gateway drug, I say that as somebody who started with the intention of creating a butterfly garden, and now it's not really just a butterfly garden anymore. I still call it a butterfly garden when I use hashtags on Instagram, but let's face it, it's a wildlife garden. It is a sanctuary for birds, butterflies, bees, lizards, chipmunks, sometimes even hawks. And it's pretty dang cool. So this video is all about that, and just how gardening for butterflies can actually lead to gardening for wildlife in general and overall. So the first thing I want to say is that when you garden for butterflies and you plant host plants for them, it opens up this whole world of native plants to you, first of all. Second of all, if you plant some of those host plants really close to your house, like I did, I planted purple passion vine, passiflora incarnata, pretty close to my patio, and so this creates the situation where the butterflies actually create their chrysalises on my house. So it literally brings nature to my front door. Literally. I mean, the chrysalises are being formed all over my studio door trim. And this studio door is at the front of my house, and it's right off the patio. So it makes nature so much closer to you. You just step right outside and it's right there. You don't even have to step outside. You can literally look through your window and it's right on the glass of your window almost. Right on the trim of your window, right? And so I find that what this does is this kind of turns us into citizen scientists, I guess you could call it. We look up close at nature, at wildlife, and we see their processes. We see their whole life cycles, at least in the case of certain butterflies that I've seen. And what this does is it just really shows you up close what their chrysalises look like, what their bodies look like when they come out of the chrysalis, the liquids that come out of them when they come out of the chrysalis. And it's very interesting, and it makes us learn something new. I feel like every time that we cultivate a new host plant for a species that we haven't yet attracted to our yard. And this also can lead you down the Keystone Species rabbit hole, which I think is one of the most important rabbit holes to go down when you are doing wildlife gardening. And what that means is Keystone Species provide important habitat for the most Lepidoptera and bee species that you can. So Keystone Species are super important and they host a lot of butterflies versus specialist species, which are also important, by the way, but keystones are the keystone species of your garden and therefore pretty much the building block and the most important building block of your garden. And so going down this rabbit hole is really important, and I think that it does come pretty quickly after starting to recognize host plants in general. Do you need a short, quick guide to get started in wildlife gardening? Well, turns out I've got just the thing. I just came out with a new free ebook just for you, and it's called A Wild Approach to Gardening 101, and it's available on my website today at macylou.com/shop. It's free, so go check it out. What do you have to lose? So what this does is this means that you are planting keystone native plants in your garden that are not only super important for the butterflies, but in turn, they're important for all the wildlife, because the food chain starts somewhere, and it typically starts with the smaller insects and the caterpillars of the garden, and then it moves up the food chain from there. Think about it. Birds, they have to feed, most of them have to feed their baby birds caterpillars and other insects, soft insects that they can eat so that they can get the energy they need to grow and turn into adult birds. Okay, first of all. And second of all, think about the chipmunks and the other little critters who utilize our gardens every day to eat not only the berries and the seeds, but also small insects. And same thing with the lizards, the skinks of our area. They also eat these insects. And think about the things that eat the chipmunks and the lizards. And it goes on and on and on until you reach maybe the hawks, right near the top of the food chain. And so these different things are so vital to create a well-rounded habitat. And so I do get a little frustrated when I hear people disparage butterfly gardeners as they only garden for the butterflies. They don't really care about, the more important things in creating habitat. I think this is kind of not very charitable, honestly, because I started out as a butterfly gardener who honestly did not care about attracting anything but the butterflies. But as time went on and I added more and more of these host plants and nectar plants for the butterflies, I started to see other things pop up too. I started to see the chipmunks, I started to see the birds, I started to see hawks, and I was fascinated. And so I wasn't about to just say, well, to heck with, everything else, I only want the butterflies. That would be silly. So, I guess as long as, we're maybe poking and prodding at those that don't want anything but the butterflies, I can see us laughing at that because that's just kind of silly. If you invite butterflies to your garden, you're most likely going to be inviting other things to your garden too, whether you like it or not. And so I think that we should just accept it and embrace it. And honestly, I don't think I really didn't embrace it. I think I just gradually got into it and just gradually enjoyed it and saw just how much diversity we can bring back to our home landscapes. It's so incredible, you guys, just all the different critters that we can invite into our gardens, sometimes even by accident. Like I said, you provide the host plants for the Lepidoptera species, and that can go up the food chain quite a bit. Same thing when you add berries to your garden, native berries, like native shrubs that produce those berries. And when you provide, native seeds via the wildflowers that you grow and letting them self-sow and letting the birds eat the seed heads, all of these little things add up to create a well-rounded habitat. And, when you add these different plants and these different planting layers, it goes a long way. Just the other day, for the first time, I saw a little brown skink in my garden. At first, I thought it was a snake, like a baby snake, because I couldn't see its legs because it was just so tiny that its legs just kind of went invisible. But it was a little brown skink. And then when I realized it was a skink, I was like, wait, is it the same as my other skinks? And then I realized, no, there's just something about it that looks different. And sure enough, instead of being a 5-lined skink or one of the similar species, it was actually a little brown skink. And when I looked them up, I realized, wow, they really like pine needles. And they really like to go under pine needles and leaf litter. What do I have more of in my garden than ever before? Pine needles and leaf litter. For 2 reasons. One is we brought pine needles in as a mulch, like a temporary mulch until other plants can grow in, because there was some empty space between some plants that we had just planted. And for 2, now that I have a cherry tree, a black cherry tree that is a keystone species that is getting more and more mature, it is creating more and more of a leaf litter layer as time goes on. So therefore, that mixed with all the other plants that I'm bringing in, it created this nice layer of protection for these little tiny skinks. And so I just find that so fascinating. I'm always finding species in my garden, I think at least every year, that I've never seen here before. And so it just tells me that I'm on the right track. I'm adding a lot of diversity here because I am adding a lot of diversity of plants. I've lost track of how many species of native plants I have added to this garden. It is incredible, and that is not to brag. That is just to say that, you know, you bring in the diversity of plants, and with it, if you're planting the right things, you bring in the diversity of animals as well. So I just want to encourage everyone to just remember that butterfly gardening can be a gateway drug, a good one, not a bad one. And it can actually bring people into the native plant space and the wildlife habitat gardening space and the homegrown national park space. All of these are vital and important, and I think that instead of disparaging butterfly gardeners, we can encourage them to just keep going, you know, keep going down those really good rabbit holes when it comes to bringing the wildlife back and bringing the biodiversity back to our gardens. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to check out previous videos with information on how to help Hurricane Helene victims. I'm going to have that information in those other videos, in the descriptions of those videos. So if you go on my channel, you can find those. They're pretty recent. And other than that, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Brand new items are now available in the shop. Thanks so much to viewers like you for supporting the channel. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at macylu.com. Thanks for watching!